Hi everyone, this is Dave from Mountbatten Estates. Today I've actually got a lovely young woman called Anne who I've spent the last month training up on our VA program, our virtual assistant program, and how to find off-market development opportunities for developers. So she's been with me a month now, started from scratch. You're going to hear her story in a few minutes. We're just going to find out a little bit about what that journey looks like, where she started, what she's learned, where she is right now, because I'm really keen to show you the value of what we do here. You know, I've built an incredible pipeline of off-market sites in less than 2 years. And it's a system that can be replicated. And these girls have helped me to get there. And I've completely automated and outsourced the whole front end, the front end of my business right now. So effectively, all I need to do now is come along and speak to vendors, warm vendors who have an interest or in potentially selling their site or the development, or at least have an interest in speaking to me because they've received a letter from one of the site finding days that we've spent finding these opportunities and creating these opportunities. So yeah, let's have a chat with Anne. And if you can kindly introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and you know, where you started a month ago and what the last month has been like for you.
Yes, thank you, Dave. As you've mentioned, I've started from scratch. I never learned anything about site finding. It's a new thing for me. And when I first started, I'm curious what it is and how are we going to do it. And in the month that we're in training, I've learned a lot. I've learned some of the ways to site find and what are the criteria depending on your developer, and what are the restrictions and constraints in site findings.
Brilliant. So if I was to mention some of those restrictions and constraints within site finding, if I was to mention a few now, you'd feel very comfortable knowing what a flood zone is.
Yes, right now I'm confident that I can find a site that's actually good, and I can identify the restriction and constraints on that particular site.
Brilliant. And what about conservation areas and green belts and Article 4s? You're familiar with all this terminology as well now,
Yes.
aren't you? Brilliant. And you're able to identify sites within a settlement boundary area. So yeah, we need to be conscious that we're always building within a residential-led area and not maybe in the green belt or conservation area, because obviously they come with their own kind of rules and potential issues for, especially when you do new builds. So you've been trained up quite a bit on new build and PD opportunities, permitted development opportunities to go from commercial to residential. Have you had any have you got any preference on whether you like finding more land and garden assembly, or do you find it more challenging or more exciting to find commercial and PD led opportunities? Have you got any preference?
Actually, it's more challenging to find back garden.
Oh, really?
And yes, new build, because for class MA for offices, mostly you can find it in high street areas where there's a lot of shops,
yeah,
and offices. And since it's COVID right now, so you can find the vacant shops, vacant buildings that you can convert into residentials. Well, back garden and new build, you really have to find it. You have to find access, make sure it's not in greenbelt or conservation areas. So
brilliant.
I think it's more challenging to find that.
Brilliant. Now I'm really pleased you mentioned class MA there, because obviously that's the youth class. We take everything from class E to residential. There's been a lot of new changes to the youth class order, hasn't there, been over the last year? So now, you know, you are able to identify sites within class E. So give me a few examples of what kind of sites you would typically find within class E.
Within class E, you can actually find like a dental office.
Yeah.
Shops, coffee shops.
Yeah.
And what do you call this? Offices, some of it actually.
That's right. Yeah, 100%.
So Most likely those offices from other classes that was converted to class E,
Yeah,
and then now they are under one class.
that's right.
And yeah, that's what we're going to look for it and make sure that it's going to be converted, or it can be converted into
That's right.
class C3 or residential.
Fantastic. 100%. I couldn't have explained that better if I tried. Brilliant answer. So in terms of, because you've learned everything to do with site finding and how to create these opportunities, but how comfortable, once you find that site, what do you do with it next? What's your approach? Okay, once I find the site, what do I need to do next with these leads? Explain to me a little bit about what that process and what you've been trained to do.
Okay, right. Because when you find the site, the first thing you have to ask yourself is how big it is, and what are the possibility, what's the surrounding or the environment in there.
Yeah,
So we don't have to actually know the details, but at least we have an idea on what can be done in that particular area.
yeah, 100%. And once you found that lead and you've identified it could be a possible lead because obviously it's a nice area, you know, there's some form of development opportunity there.
Mm.
Explain to people what the next step is. Well, I've addressed that there's no sort of constraint or issue I need to be aware of. So I'm going to put it on my list. What happens next? Explain to me the next steps about how do we actually go from there to getting someone to call us with our letter. Explain that process.
Yes. Okay. So once we found the area, we have to know who the owner is, of course, and then we have to reach out to the owner. We have to send them a letter, and if we receive a feedback, that's really good. If we receive a feedback the first time, but if not, we have to send them another one and do a follow up.
Brilliant. Yeah, because there is a system that you guys follow, isn't there? Every 2 months,
Yes.
you have your first letter, 2 months later, second letter, 2 months later, a third letter, and then a year later, a follow-up letter. Because we find that, you know, if they're motivated enough to come back to you within 6 months, they will. If they're not, then maybe send out a letter a year down the line because something might change in their circumstances.
Yes, that's right.
And it does work. And you've got it's some interesting ways of site finding, haven't you? It's not just all about Nimbus. You know, we use planning portals, we use council websites, and we look for some really interesting stuff that's either just gone in or been in the system for a long time that's maybe lapsed. Have you got any of that stuff that you have more of a fondness of finding or more of an interest in finding?
Yes, it's easier actually. It's easier to find it if you're going to look for the planning portal, especially the one in the weekly list or the monthly list, because you have an idea where to start, where to find the perfect site first. Because usually in that area, when there's a development going on, there's also a near place that's good for development, or a site that's really good.
Brilliant, yeah.
So
Because normally you find where someone's already doing developments already, subject to not being a major house builder, and we're talking hundreds and hundreds of units, but if there's 1 or 2 or 3 smaller developments going on, that's a good sign because it means that obviously people have done their research already. They know that there's a bit of demand for that type of product. And that can always bode quite well for you looking in that area because you know there might be a bit of demand. And if the council is consenting those type of developments already, then all we need
yes,
to do is find something similar and replicate what they've already consented, whatever whatever the
yes.
council has already previously agreed to. Because all we're trying to do is just do more of the same.
That's right.
So,
So,
if you have any advice for anyone who is thinking about maybe considering a VA, what would you say to someone who's on the fence? Maybe they're not, maybe it's something I can do myself, but I'm really keen for you to maybe just explore how much time this whole, because it is quite a time consuming job, isn't it? You know, you go
yes.
doing this full time and I see how much hard work goes into it. Try and explain to someone sitting on the fence why they should consider having a VA who, like yourself, highly trained, knows the planning system inside out, knows what PD is, how to look for PD and airspace opportunities, maybe new build from the ground up. Explain how valuable that is to someone who is kind of short on time?
Yes, actually, if you have a VA that's trained to find site, and actually, it's gonna take a lot of time because right now, we're trying to find sites, and we are two VAs and one developer, and there's really not too much site that we can find, even though we're already two, and it takes us like the whole 8 hours. Our job is just to find site, and it takes time. So if you don't have the time, and you need other things to do, then it's best to get a VA that's trained to do that.
Brilliant, lovely. And thank you so much, guys. Hopefully everyone got some good value from that. If you have any advice or any questions you want to, you want me to come back to you on, feel free to reach out to me on the details below, or feel free to reach out to me on my website, mountbattenestates.co.uk. More than happy to show you how this has worked for me, how it's benefited my business, how I've grown a multi-million pound pipeline of developments within 2 years. I'm more than happy to show you all that. And I have done this using girls like Anne over here, who's highly trained, highly skilled. They've got all my planning knowledge, all my site finding knowledge, and now they've freed up 8 to 10 hours a day of my time every single day, finding me hundreds of leads every month, which is allowing me to scale up even quicker than what I'm doing right now. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to discuss this further with you. Lovely. Thanks, everyone.